but I feel like they could ask more questions. The best way to get a response from me, I think, or my son, is to ask a question. Right now, all the communications we get are very one way. It's very look at us. And there may be a CTA to join a virtual tour or a webinar, but they're not asking the detailed questions that they could then use to really create a campaign that gets one of us excited and allows us to better see why it's a good match.
Welcome to Mission of Missions. I'm your host, Jeremy Tiers. This is the show designed to help you grow, both professionally and personally, in the fast-paced world of higher education. Every other Tuesday, I sit down with senior leaders, new professionals, and difference makers from across higher ed and beyond, where we'll share tips and strategies related to challenging topics like student recruitment, leadership, customer service, enrollment marketing, and time management. So if you're looking for practical advice and conversations that actually move the needle, this show's for you. Grab your notepad or fire up your notes app, and let's get into it. Hey everybody, it's Jeremy Tiers, and we're up to episode 84 of the Mission Admissions podcast. Joining me today is my friend Melissa Greiner, VP of Marketing at CampusESP, and during a recent chat together, we were catching up and we were talking about a whole bunch of things, including our children and high school and how all that was going. I have a daughter who is a sophomore, and Melissa has a son who is a junior, and he is definitely full into the college search process now. Melissa was just sharing with me as we started recording this that they took some campus visits last week. So I'm curious to hear about that. And I just thought it would be interesting to bring Melissa on, have her talk about the early stages of the process, really from the parent point of view, which is, again, such a important point of view, as you all listening know. And so it's great to see you again, Mel, and thanks for joining me on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
Okay, so child number one going through this process, Henry, your son, who's a junior, correct?
Correct.
What has this whole process been like for you so far as a parent, whatever you're comfortable sharing?
I think the easiest way to summarize it has been humbling. I think that's the adjective that I will choose. I have worked in parent and family engagement in higher education for almost 5 years now, longer in the higher ed world. You think you know things, and you very quickly realize that everything that you thought you knew was through a beautiful set of rose-colored glasses. I have a lot more appreciation now, I think, for every college applicant in a very different environment than when I applied. I'm not going to insert the number of years ago, as well as for those folks in enrollment marketing and admissions who are in a very competitive atmosphere and trying to get the attention of 16 and 17-year-olds, which on its own is quite the challenge.
I would love to understand, because I know what my daughter says to me, right? Which is every couple of weeks since she started getting college mail, and she's getting a combination of emails as a sophomore as well as direct mail, right? Mainly postcards and such. I'll be like, Olivia, what do you think about all this stuff? And she's like, well, Dad, it's a lot of information, but it's really not information that I care about. I'm curious, when you ask, if you have that type of conversation with Henry, what does he say so far just about, I'll say, the volume of information and the type of information he's getting from different schools?
Very similar feedback. The emails have been, I think he would use the word incessant. And I know why they're coming, but to him, it feels very disconnected from the information he has put out into the ether. So he's taken the PSAT multiple times, obviously. He took his SATs for the first time at the beginning of the school year. He'll be doing them again in a couple of weeks. And so in his mind, he has offered up a certain amount of information. He thinks that that is what is being used to reach out to him, and probably in a very fair mental connection for a 17-year-old junior, he thinks that they're saying, okay, you want to study X, we offer X, this would be a good match. But he's getting a large amount of mail from people who don't even offer the major that he has very clearly expressed interest in. And that gets him very confused and frustrated. I'm not sure if your daughter's reaction is the same, but his is one of impatience right now. And with the volume and the noise of all of this the first time that he gets frustrated that they are not listening, quote unquote, he shuts them down. He has blocked schools on his email. And when it comes to the mailers, he will always look at them, if only because I leave them literally at his place at the dining room table at dinner. So he has to see them, but he hands them very quickly back to me because he does know that I do keep them. I have a pile growing in my home office. I'd love to see how tall it gets by the time he actually selects a school. But his feedback is generally they're not listening to me. They're not talking to me about what I have expressed, even if it's a small amount of information. And it all sounds the same.
You use the word humbling. I would love, if you're comfortable, like to have you expand on that. What are some of the things that have just either surprised you or humbled you a little bit from the parent lens so far in this process?
Yeah. So I think part of it is the difference between myself and my son, which I think every parent has these moments where they look back fondly on their own experience and they assume that things are similar in the world around us, but also maybe that their child will respond to them in a similar manner, but we're all so different. For me, the challenge has been how to be supportive and push him in that right direction without overstepping where I feel my line should be. But I also know that he needs a little bit of guardrails, or else he's going to get overwhelmed and potentially tune out. And that is very much what I do not want to happen. So part of it is knowing my place, part of it is helping him think through the decisions on his plate. As you mentioned, we did a number of campus visits this past weekend, and the sheer amount of information that he had in a real world environment, which was so helpful compared to, I guess, the lack of personalized information he's been getting in mail, but also made him rethink everything. At one point, he was like, I need to change my major. And I was overwhelmed by that as he was overwhelmed by it. And it really makes you think about how you want to help them make these big decisions in life. And they do turn to you. I mean, I see personally with him that he is very welcoming of my opinion and my expertise, as well as for my husband. My husband does not work in higher ed, but he also wants to hear another perspective. He knows that we know him. We've seen him grow up. We've seen where his interests have lied, what he's done well in, what he does not do well in. And he wants kind of just that check mark, that support system behind him, that the direction he's starting to lead us on is one that we think is a good path for him.
Have you or your husband at this point had a single school communicate at all with either one of you?
Yes. I have had a handful, and I say a handful, like I would probably count them on two hands. Probably about 7 or 8 schools have reached out directly to me, mostly via email. We have gotten one mailer from a school that was addressed directly to us.
And what would, either for you personally, or I don't know if you and your husband have had this kind of dialogue, but like what would be helpful right now, Mel, if colleges sent it to you in terms of like a certain kind of information from, again, the parent point of view?
I feel like I'm a little spoiled having worked in this world, that some things I know. But what I saw this weekend when we did our visits is how much my husband does not know. So I almost put on his hat a little bit when I answer this question because he is less tied into the world than I am. Some of the questions I think always are going to go back to financial aid. Even at this early in the process, the timing of when these things happen, how much information we need to provide. My son is considering early action or early decision for some schools. Does that mean we get financial aid offers faster or at different times because the decisions need to be made differently? All of that can feel a little bit overwhelming. And I think we want to just have a big picture of the timeline that's in front of us. So when we're in it, we feel very comfortable with the next steps that we need to be going on. So right now is the time I feel like for us to start collecting that, the overall timeline, so we can think about that big picture. And then the last thing is really what sets the university apart. And I know how hard that can feel for schools. They all are unique and special and have all these great programs that create this culture. Putting that into words in an email. Like that is very difficult. So I don't envy the challenge they have in front of them. But if they do understand what my son wants to study, if they have any other information about our family and what maybe he's interested in, helping us connect the dots that this is actually a good institution for him. I want to see those little things that make that school special. If you reach out to me and you don't offer the major he was interested in and you want to talk about D1 athletics, you have never met my son. But I feel like they can ask more questions. The best way to get a response from me, I think, or my son, is to ask a question. Right now, all the communications we get are very one way. It's very look at us. And there may be a CTA to join a virtual tour or a webinar, but they're not asking the detailed questions that they could then use to really create a campaign that gets one of us excited and allows us to better see why it's a good match. I think it's very interesting that there's not a lot of that data collection. I don't know if there's a fear that people will not provide it or it feels overwhelming in a already busy department office to know what to do with all of that data if it's collected. I know for our customers that use Campus ESP for prospective families, one of the things that we have them do is an onboarding form. As a parent joins their prospective family portal, they are filling out a form, right? And it's basic information like your name and your email address and how often you want to get emails. But we very highly encourage schools to ask some of those questions that would help them better communicate with this family and this student.
You went and did these visits. Obviously, it was a lot of information. What was the biggest thing you feel like your husband walked away either confused about or just, hey, like this is the first question he asked me, like when my son wasn't around after we got back from like this weekend of visits?
The most surprising thing to him is the detail in which admissions are run these days. I don't know what has happened in the last 20 years or so since we were through this process, but it seems like a much more complicated process to get into colleges these days than it used to be. Maybe it's just self-reflection or time has fuzzied our memories. But looking at acceptance rates and some of the expectations that they have for students, that I think that was the first thing that I saw him visually respond to in some of the conversations we were having with admission counselors and tours. The other thing is he really wanted to know about the campus community, the vibes. And I don't even want to use the word vibes because my son would cringe at me saying cringe and vibes. He wanted to really find a place that our son would feel at home, where he would find his people. So as he had the opportunity to, his questions were basically the things maybe that we thought our son might ask that he was not confident enough to ask or did not think to ask, that would verify that this was a place that would support him and how he learns and how he likes to interact with other people. I will also say this isn't part of your question, but what I got most interested in watching him, it wasn't like the concern that he had, but what got him the most excited about some of the schools that we visited was when he had the opportunity to talk to students. When he was able to see a student that reminded us maybe a little bit of our son and see where that student had come from, why they had selected that university, what they were studying, what activities they were now a part of, what their plan was for an upcoming internship, or if they were a fourth year, where they were planning to go after graduation. It helped put the whole process into perspective. And, we can look at our son, who is 6'2", taller than us both, and we still see a little kid, right? It's impossible for you to completely shake that as a parent. But when we were able to see a student that was very similar to our son, starting on a new co-op and building Formula One cars and joining nature hiking clubs and living on their own off campus and having 3 offers for jobs after graduation in May, it kind of gives you hope and almost just like a little bit of excitement about what a particular school and program could do to elevate your child into the next journey of their life.
And I appreciate you sharing all that. And I love that you went where you did with that because I think it's such an important point for anyone listening to this podcast, Mel. And that again is this idea of, yes, students hearing from current students, right? Your son hearing from current students is helpful, but it's equally helpful for parents because parents absolutely, and anybody listening who's a parent gets what Mel said, and will get again what I'm about to reinforce, which is we want to feel like our child is going to again be safe, happy, all the things. Well, how does that happen? Well, when we see other students who remind us of our child or who have similar, that helps reinforce, okay, maybe, right, my son, my daughter, right, could be happy at this school, and this school could be a place that they would enjoy like spending the next 4 years of their life, right?
For sure. I feel like I need to steal something from a fellow higher ed individual. He basically said universities are asking families to hand over their two most valuable assets, their child and their bank account. And you have to do them in tandem. And when you do that in tandem, you're going to have such a better result because you are showing the ROI there on this big decision that families are making. You're putting a lot of trust into a school and you want to make sure that the investment pays off. But most importantly, you want to make sure that your student comes out better for it.
Besides, I'll say engaging with current students, what else did either you or your husband find helpful, Mel, when you all were visiting these campuses over the weekend?
So I think one of them was being able to talk to faculty along with students. In most of the institutions that we visited, we had the opportunity to do like a secondary tour within the college or program that he was interested in, where you got to not only see potentially the the facilities that he'd have access to and some of the things that students are currently working on, but had conversations with the faculty that would be supporting him on that journey. That was really also eye-opening because generally these are very impressive individuals who have a big passion for what they do. Again, that whole trust perspective when you can see those people who would be in front of a classroom and how they interact with your student right then and how excited they are about the potential of them joining the university community and where they could go. That gives you a little bit of confidence. I also think that there's definitely something to being able to have a quiet time on campus. And this might sound a little weird, but they do try to stick a lot into a couple hours of a preview day or an open house. And I appreciate that because especially if you're driving from a long distance, you want to make sure you made an investment in your weekend where you're going to get a lot of information and it's worth the time. But having moments where we could just be a fly on the wall in a operational campus, I think gave us a lot of perspective on the general atmosphere of everybody who was a part of that community. At one point, at one of the schools, we sat down in a coffee shop and we were just overhearing conversations of students and watching the people move by us. In another place, we were on a quad where we were freezing, but we were trying to just sit there and watch the world kind of circulating around us. But these little glimpses of conversations that you get, how the students are interacting with each other, how they're interacting with facilities and faculty and professors, that I think also gives you a taste of the community that is very hard to put into words. You have to experience that.
If I quizzed you right now, do you remember the names of any of the tour guides from the campuses?
I do. I remember all of them. And I would say that they should give those kids, I don't know, a bonus or something. They were wonderful representatives of their
What made
institutions.
them so wonderful?
Part of it, I think, is truly their passion for their schools. You don't sign up for this job because you don't have school spirit. There's a certain kind of student that signs up for either an orientation leader or a tour guide role. They have this infectious energy about the school that I think is wonderful, but they don't have to be over the top, right? Outgoing, extroverted all the time. I'm one of the individuals that gave us a tour this weekend. I would definitely say he probably isn't the life of every party, but he definitely took the time to talk directly to my son about what he was interested in and tailor his conversations and his tour as he could to something that would feel like it would resonate with him. He was also very open about his own experience. It's one thing to talk in generalities and give fun facts about how long this building has been on campus or a fun fact about a research facility. But when they talk about their personal experiences, potentially the struggles that they had figuring out where to go to school or the things that took adjustment after they did enroll, you start to trust them more as people. You start to really see what the end result could look like. And I think it just creates a better affinity between you and that institution as well as through that kid.
How are you helping, and how are your husband, I'm sure, is part of this process too. How are you both helping your son, I'll say, navigate a couple of things? When it comes to schools, right? There are obviously much larger student body schools and there are smaller schools, right? There are schools that cost a lot of money and there are schools that I would still say are expensive, but I'll say are more affordable for like a large majority of the population. Where's the balance as a parent, Mel, right now in saying, okay, we want to let our son kind of figure some of this out, and we also have to kind of like steer the ship a little bit because he doesn't know what he doesn't know when it comes to like specifically the size of the school and the costs of these schools that he might have an interest in.
Yeah. So I will be completely transparent that we have spent a lot of time with our friend Chat GPT to get some of this figured out. Because to your point, it can feel overwhelming, and going to a bunch of different websites and trying to find on their site where they list the undergraduate student population, where they list the average acceptance rate, that can be complicated. If I can ask once and populate a spreadsheet of his top 5 schools with all of these different pieces of information, that is a huge time saver, and we will totally start there, and it is very much where we started. Do not worry, people who are like, LLMs cannot be trusted. I fact check. So we know that the numbers we're looking at now are accurate, but it got us to 75% so much faster than we would have done with a manual search. I have, and I know not every family is in the position to do this, I have tried to tell him to not look at costs yet because I want him to make a decision on the kind of school that is right for him with that not being over his head. We can figure things out if the school that is truly the best match for him is on the more expensive side. That's worry about that if that is where we get to. Right now, I want him to be focused on the size of the school, the location of the school, the programs that he wants to be involved in, and then some of those more nuanced things that lead into the vibe and the community that he wants to be a part of. Um, that is how he got his list to the list that he has now. It is how we vetted adding or taking away schools. And I want him to feel like he made that short list. Let's worry about where he gets accepted then. And then we'll have some of those maybe final decision making conversations as we get closer to next spring.
So then if you could give colleges and universities listening to this just one piece of advice, Mel, and I'm sure there's a lot of advice you'd give, but I'm going to ask you to pick one thing, especially right now, I'll say when it comes to communicating specifically to parents and guardians of students who are either juniors or sophomores. What is that one thing?
Ooh. I think my one thing is that you probably cannot over communicate with a family member or a parent. Students, like as we talked about earlier today, they can be overwhelmed and you are emailing them a lot. I think you all know exactly how many touches you are doing. To them, it probably feels a lot. They've never really gotten emails before other than from esports and their teachers every once in a while. So this is a whole new thing for them and it is very fast and furious. I am very used to thousands of emails a day. I know how to filter through them. I know what I'm looking for. So I will never feel like you trying to help me find the right place for my child to start their next journey and succeed in their community long term is a burden. And if you are doing it intentfully and you are using the information that has been provided to really show me that there is value in me learning more, I will applaud your efforts also because it will make my job easier. But then going back to what we said towards the beginning here about collecting information, I know this may be technically 2 pieces of advice, but as you are communicating with those families on a very regular basis, use the information you are collecting to tailor those communications to meet them where they are and talk to them about what matters to them and their students.
I'll ask you one final question, Mel, on that note, because I know you guys do at Campus ESP have so much data. You and I talk about it, right, around parents and families and how this process affects them. What new trend or change, if there is one, I'm curious, I'm sure the audience would be too, and just the way family engagement is happening in this process. are you all seeing or have you seen, I'll say, in the last 6 to 12 months? Anything?
There are definitely trends. I feel like I have to take this opportunity to plug our 2026 Top Trends in Family Engagement Report that just happened to drop today. So it is available if anybody wants to dig into 5 huge trends that we are seeing with families and how they engage with higher education. One of those trends, which I feel like is the most dramatic in terms of how it has changed most recently, is the parent perspective on the return on investment of a college education. It's not great, guys. The last year, it fell about 20 points. So it is down to in the 50% range on if families feel like the investment that they are making is to their satisfaction. Do they feel like it is a worthwhile investment? We know that there is so much that goes into higher education and what a needle mover it can be for students to elevate. The more that colleges can identify ways to provide that information to families, the better that satisfaction rating is going to get. Families simply just want to know that what they are spending their money on is actually providing advancement for their students. So things like career placement opportunities and outcomes and starting salaries, all of that data that most schools have and are very proud of need to be communicated to families more and more so that they feel comfortable with the investment that they are putting into this education.
The last thing I do on every episode, Mel, is something I call fun rapid fire. And so I'm just going to give you a handful of things and I want to get some quick answers on each one from you, okay?
Okay, let's do it.
All right, you like to travel a lot. What's the most you destination out there, Mel?
London, England.
Why?
I spent a study abroad in London in college. It completely changed me for many different reasons, but it now feels like a second home, and I will always take the opportunity to go back there.
Better food, the brisket pulled pork and ribs combo at the Dinosaur Barbecue or a cheesesteak from Angelo's there in Philly?
Oh my God, Syracuse versus Philly. You are going for the jugular. Oh gosh. I'm Philly born and bred. I have to do cheesesteak, but Dinosaur Barbecue has a place in my heart.
I had never heard of Dinosaur Barbecue until, I looked it up, but apparently, yes, to your point, it's a very popular place around Syracuse where you are an alum from.
Yes, I am. And I waited for 2.5 hours for Dinosaur Barbecue this past weekend, and it was worth it.
Okay. Will the Philadelphia Eagles win the NFC conference next season? Go with your head, not your heart, Mel.
Yes, because we have new staff that are going to fix the problems of this past year.
Well, as a Minnesota Vikings fan, I hope the answer is no, but that's a whole nother conversation as well. What food disappears fastest in your house?
I'm going to go right now with ramen. Both of my kids are loving sneaking ramen before I get home from work and make dinner so that their appetite is spoiled.
And the audience can't see me, but I absolutely broke down laughing there because my daughter 100% is on a ramen kick right now as a sophomore. It's absolutely hilarious to where my wife is like, you're going to get a head start on college.
It's like they know it's coming and they just need to perfect their methodology there.
Correct. Favorite ice cream flavor, Mel, what is it?
Ben & Jerry's Cherry Garcia.
And the last one, best book you've read in the past year, what would it be?
The Midnight Library. It's a little older than a year old. I got to it late, but it is a wonderful story and definitely worth the pickup.
Well, I appreciate you being on today, and hopefully you and I can connect again when your son is a senior, much like I have had other guests on in the past through their journey in the different stages of it. I will be curious to see just how the process changes, not only for your son, but for you and your husband, right, as he goes through the rest of this. And I look forward to the next time that we get connected.
Keep your fingers crossed for me.
Thanks for listening to Mission Admissions. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify network, home to Higher Ed's the largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow, so be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.